Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning if you're from the West Coast. My name is Debbie Schwartz. I'm the founder of Road2College and the Paying for College 101 group. Today, we're going to talk about merit scholarships. And before we get started, if you could put in the chat where you are watching from, what year your student is in high school. Have you started any sort of college search yet? And kind of like where you are in the process of figuring out the college process in general. And just love to hear a little bit more about you, your students, and what some of the major questions are that you're grappling with. Let's see, Texas. Oh, to Texas, Florida, Brooklyn. Great, all over. Upcoming senior, rising senior. Yeah, so I'm just curious, and there is no judgment. This is, I guess, the beginning of June. For families who are rising seniors, so your student just finished 11th grade, they're gonna be a high school senior. How much of the college process have you started or not? So have you gone on visits? Have you created a college list yet? Have you thought about essays? And again, there's absolutely no judgment. I'm just kind of curious. Some people, start this much earlier, and some people are just kind of, getting things together and acting on what they need to do. Nothing yet. Visited some colleges. And I'm curious for the people who have visited colleges, and we just did a session on Tuesday with a former admissions dean about like her best suggestions about how to visit a college. Did you do research before you visited a college, or just did you go just to kind of see some colleges? And again, neither is wrong, just curious how people are approaching visiting colleges. Lots of visits, created a list, beginning to think about essays. Yep. Big question, what's the likelihood my daughter gets more merit aid discount when? What's showing up in the net price calculator? Oh, that's a good question. And we can talk a little bit about that. Research before visiting. Yes, researched. Just getting on campus, no research. Okay, I mean, again, everybody approaches it differently. There's no completely right or wrong answer. I will say that I find that the people who get the better results out of the process do more research. And whether it's research, I guess it also depends on where you live in terms of visiting colleges. If it's going to cost a lot, to go, visit colleges, because what then it's probably, worth the effort to research and make sure that the colleges that you're visiting, your student has the possibility of getting into. One thing we talked about on Tuesday was it just doesn't turn out well emotionally, if you start visiting colleges where your student just doesn't have a chance of being admitted, because there's no sense in going to a college that your student, or visiting a college that your student likes, and they kind of fall in love with the physical aspects of the college, and then it turns out that they just don't even have an academic chance of getting admitted. So that type of research I do recommend, unless you live very close to a college. To tell you the truth, I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I am a stone's throw away from like 5, 6, 7 colleges. So, it's not a big deal to go see a college campus, whether or not, a student can get in. But if I had to pay or spend a few hours driving, I would probably at least make sure that the college we're visiting is my student has a pretty decent chance of being admitted to. Or, as somebody said, or the financial chance of affording it. Absolutely. That you want to make sure both of those criteria are satisfied if you're going to spend the time to visit. Okay, so thank you all for sharing this. Let me pull up my slides, and then let's get going. Oh, let me just do a few other minor housekeeping. This is actually technically a meeting, and so, the only reason I say that is that if you want to unmute and ask a question or share a comment, feel free to do that. But if you don't have anything to say, if you can keep your mic's muted, just so that we don't hear any background noise. If you'd like to show your video, it's nice to see people's faces. So that's just, for other people and for myself. And this is recorded, and we'll send out the recording. Today's Friday. It may not go out till Monday, but you will get a link to the recording. Okay, let me share my screen. And of course, put in questions in comments. I will glance to the questions, but I may not be able to look at them until after, just because this is like a lunchtime event. So I really try and get through the slides within the hour. Okay. Great. Let me just, can somebody just comment to make sure that you can see my slides?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just pull this up. Okay, sorry, just minimizing things on my screen. Okay, so today we're talking about merit scholarships and how you can use that information to build a more balanced list for your student. And I'm also going to show you a tool that we created called Insights, and it will just help jumpstart a lot of the research that you may end up doing. So although this presentation is about merit scholarships, I always start from the standpoint of the financial, because honestly, right, that's a lot of reasons why people are wanting to understand merit scholarships. They need to find colleges that can offer it to their students, because we're trying to find a way to afford college in this crazy world that we're in right now. And if you look at the different buckets of which you can pull money from, right? There's really three major ones. There's your family contributions, if you've been able to, and hopefully you've been able to do some savings over 18 years. And if not, and I'm going through this quickly, and if not, a lot of people, or in addition to savings, people might try and cash flow as much as they can while the student is in college. So that's one bucket. The next bucket is free money, and free money can come from a few sources. Free money meaning that it is money that your student is not going to have to pay back. It's money that does not, or you will not have to pay back. It's money that does not accrue interest. So the four major areas that you can get free money from is through financial aid, which is directly from the colleges, through merit scholarships, which is directly from the colleges, through private scholarships, which is a whole nother process of sending out applications. I have my personal opinion on that, which is it is, to me, it's the something you do after it's not gonna get you as much money as you think. It's pretty time consuming. People are successful at it, but it is a lot of work. So it depends on how much effort your student wants to put into it. And you kind of have to create a system around how you're going to do it. But the reason I hesitate is if I have a limited amount of effort, right? It's not where I'm going to put most of my effort first. And most of my effort is going to go towards researching the right college, because your student's largest scholarship is going to come from the college itself. So you want to research the right college to either find a college that's going to offer more financial aid if you're a family that's going to need or be qualified for financial aid, or, as I'm sure most of the people are on here, you want to find the college that can offer the most merit scholarships. And the last are government grants, which are usually income dependent. And then finally, if those two buckets of what your family can contribute, even after you've found colleges that can offer, financial aid or merit scholarships, there may still be a gap, and that gap you'll have to fill through some sort of borrowing. Most students borrow from the federal government, and in addition, sometimes families have to borrow from private loans. So just wanted to kind of put the perspective of why merit scholarships are so important, is because it's probably going to be the largest source of free money that you can find for your students. Okay, so if again, we kind of are coming from the perspective of merit scholarships, it's going to be the source that's going to help pay for college and it's quote free money, then all the research around your student's college list becomes so much more important. But I honestly started in this space about 8 years ago, and I didn't understand why there wasn't more emphasis on building a student's college list. It is the pivotal point in the process, right? The college list becomes so strategic and important because every college that you put on the list itself is going to drive your family's final costs, right? Because whatever colleges are on that list are the only colleges your student's going to apply to. It's going to be the colleges your student is going to be accepted to or not. And then finally, the last set of schools that your student is accepted to are the schools that are going to drive your costs, because that's what your student and you are going to be able to choose from. So every school that you put on your student's list is really important. Is it a school that you can financially afford? Is it a school that has a good possibility of accepting your student? Is it a school that is going to offer your student merit scholarships? That's research and knowledge that you can have before your student even sends in that application. And that's, I think, the most important. If you can walk away with anything today, that's the most important message, is that if you do good research beforehand, you know a lot before your student even applies. A lot of times people and students just apply and they kind of figure it out after the fact. I mean, that's fine, but then usually there's a lot of disappointment. It's a possibility for a lot of missed opportunities. So do as much work now before the applications go in. And finally, it's a saying we like to say is a student, you can't get money from a college you don't apply to. So again, in this like spring time frame for seniors, we hear a lot of comments about, oh, I didn't know that, XYZ college didn't offer merit scholarships. Well, you could have, and you should have known that. Or I didn't know that this college was going to be so expensive. I feel badly that families are coming to that realization in the spring, but they could have, and they should have known that back in before their student applied. So
my headphones on, but yeah, this needs to go downstairs and this needs to go somewhere. It was in the middle of the floor.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's not empty. Oh yeah, that one is. Oh, I rolled the other one.
Whoever is speaking, for some reason I can't mute you. Hello. So E. Campbell. Oh, there it goes. I don't know why. Okay. Sorry about that. Some people were coming in unmuted. Okay. So yes, if you can keep yourself muted, unless you have a question, I appreciate it. And somehow I had a problem muting that person. Okay, so what is merit scholarships? There's lots of different kind of double names for really what it is. Some people, it can be called merit aid. It can be called scholarships. In essence, to some extent, it is a tuition discount. And really, the colleges are using this. Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that merit scholarship is money from the college itself. So it's what they call, institutional funds. And so if you think about it from that perspective, the college has the right to decide how they're going to spend their money. And so they have set aside these funds, and they said, we're going to use this money in most cases to attract a certain type of student that we want to bring to our college. And usually that student could be, majority of the time, it is a student that is a strong academic student, because everybody is trying to raise their rankings, raise the quality of their school. And a lot of times the quality of the school is based on the stats of the students that got accepted. So colleges are using the money as a discount to a student who might be a much stronger student and might not have normally considered coming to that school, but maybe with this discount, they feel like, oh, the school became much more affordable. And quite honestly, maybe it's a better ROI if I go to that school because it's going to cost me less money. So think about it, that the colleges are using their money strategically to attract a certain type of student. What's also important to know about merit aid is that it is not dependent on a student's financial need. But you might have colleges that do ask you to fill out the FAFSA. And the reason why that they are asking that is, again, they're not necessarily using it to award the merit money, but they sometimes will want to make sure that you truly don't have financial need, because if you had financial need, they might be offering you need-based aid, and that comes from a different bucket within the the school's like system. So even though the merit money is going to be based on your students' academic stats, and it's truly not financially oriented, they may still ask for your FAFSA. The other really good thing about merit scholarships as opposed to private scholarships is that merit scholarships are renewable. So again, that's why it's so important to understand this process and have your students be awarded merit scholarships as they're entering college, because then they will have that scholarship for 4 years. Private scholarships are usually, not in all cases, but a very large majority, are one and done. So they are awarded for 1 year, and then if the student, sometimes also the student cannot apply for the same scholarship the following year. So then your student has to go out and find another scholarship. Anyhow, you can see how the work builds up with private scholarships. Not that it's not a doable thing, it just takes more effort. And then a lot of times to renew, the college may put on a minimum GPA requirement for that merit scholarships. The only reason I bring that up now, it's going to become more important right before your student accepts, because you want to make sure some colleges make it pretty straightforward and easy with that minimum GPA, as it could just be a 3.0. Some colleges actually make it higher. I've seen merit scholarships with 3.5, and those I'm more concerned about, because depending on how your student does, and college is going to be new to them, and even a strong student may not be able to get a 3.5 their first year. So the worst situation is we want to avoid the situation where a family and a student accepts a merit scholarship, and then they can't meet the minimum GPA requirement, and their scholarship is taken away, sophomore, junior year, because all of a sudden that college, which was affordable with the merit scholarship, is no longer affordable. So those are the kind of fine print you want to understand, again, before your student accepts the merit scholarships. And then just from a planning perspective, and this is just another piece of research I'm kind of piling up on parents, sorry about that, but that you should be looking at the total cost of college over 4 years, not just what it's going to cost to attend that freshman year. And, during the pandemic, the colleges didn't really raise their tuition, but some colleges, I should say more than some, a majority, since the past year or two have been, the tuition increases have been significant, and more so than in the past, and they're probably trying to make up for COVID. So I've seen tuition increases of honestly 8 and 9%, when in the past I would have said to budget for a 5% increase. So so I say this, that it's important to look at 4 years of what it's going to cost, and estimate a tuition increase every year. And unfortunately, the merit scholarship doesn't increase. So that's flat, but tuition does increase. So you just need to incorporate all this when you're thinking about your finances for covering the total costs. Okay, so getting straight into different types of merit scholarships. These categories aren't like official. These are just groupings that we've made up over the years to just better provide a better framework for thinking about merit scholarships. There's a group of scholarships that I call automatic, and that is because the student doesn't have to do anything extra to be considered for those merit scholarships. So they just have to send in their application, and mostly these colleges share a grid or a chart on their website about the criteria that is needed to be awarded the merit scholarships. And I'm going to show you some examples of those. And then if a scholarship isn't automatically considered, then it's probably competitive. And what that means is that there could be an extra application that your student needs to fill out, which a lot of times comes with an essay. It could be that these competitive scholarships are on the school's website, and a student needs to just get the additional application and fill it out. In other cases, you won't know about these additional merit scholarships until your student applies, and then once they apply, the college says to them, "We'd like you." They kind of invite them to apply to these additional scholarships. So those are usually the two ways that happens. And again, I'm going to show you some examples. And then the last category has to do with students that have a particular talent that colleges are offering additional scholarship money for. And that is usually, related to music, to dance, to drama. And along with that goes a portfolio that needs to be submitted, or auditions that need to be scheduled. That's usually a very specific group of students. But what's important with all of these, and again, I'm going to stress this as I go through the examples, that deadlines are very important. There are deadlines for these competitive merit scholarship applications that need to be submitted, and there are definitely deadlines related to auditions that need to be scheduled, when portfolios need to be shared with the college. And the deadline, this is kind of part of your students' maturation to adulthood, but it could be very frustrating if the student isn't keeping track of the deadlines, which you're probably going to have to help them with. And if a deadline is missed, it could mean missing out on a potential scholarship and money. So deadlines are the name of the game. And you've probably already been involved with deadlines because it were related to signing up for SAT or ACTs. And they're just going to become more important this summer and fall if your student is going to be a high school senior. Okay, so here's an example of a school with an automatic merit scholarship, and they share this information on their website. I've been doing this presentation for a few years, and so I kind of just keep adding each year to the chart so we can kind of see the changes. So the first chart I have here is from 2020, which is 4 years ago now, right before the pandemic, and it's at the bottom right of my screen. This is Miami University in Ohio, and before the pandemic, the school required both a certain ACT, SAT level and a GPA, and that's how they were awarding the scholarship money. So you could see that the highest level, you had to have a 33 or higher, you had to have a 1450 in SAT, you had to have a 3.5 GPA, and at that level, a student could get either a half or full tuition scholarship, which is significant. And now if you kind of move to the left, bottom left, you could see we started to be in the midst of the pandemic. This was 2021. And the school took away the requirement for ACT, SAT. The same, and you can also see that every year, this again, I'm kind of going back to my comment that said, this money is the college's institutional money. They can choose to decide how they want to award it. So you can see that they fool around with the requirements, and they also change the actual dollar amount that's awarded. And honestly, the other part of this industry, and I am going to call it an industry, is that colleges work with what they call enrollment management consultants. And they are looking at these numbers every year, the numbers meaning how many students did they attract, how many students were offered the scholarship, what were the stats of the students, and they look to say, should we change the requirements that we want, for the academic requirements, to pull in a different type of students? Do we need to lower or increase the dollar amount to make it more attractive? So they're constantly analyzing the what they offer and then the results, and deciding in the following year, should we make changes? And you can kind of see some of these tweaks as you compare the charts. Now you skip to fall of 2023, and you can see that they've increased the GPA that is required for the top award. They no longer say, full tuition scholarship. They might still offer it, but they're not putting it on their charts. And from fall of 2023 to fall of 2024, they kept it the same. Almost, yeah, basically it looks like they kept mostly the same. I don't have the chart yet for what would be for your students, for students entering in the fall of 2025. Probably colleges they might be a little delayed this year because of what happened with FAFSA, delayed in terms of kind of looking at all this information. I will, in the next few weeks, start looking at different colleges' websites to see if these charts are changing. But this is the type of research that you need to start to look at. And I'm going to show you how you can identify the colleges that offer merit scholarships, and then you're going to want to start looking at their websites to see if they have this information out yet. And if they don't, your student could actually start asking admissions officers, if the information has been changed from last year and when that information might be available. The other thing I want to point out, particularly about Miami University, is that they specified that the GPA that they use is a weighted high school GPA. This is actually a little bit unusual. Most schools tend to use an unweighted GPA that they calculate, because that way they can do an apples to apples comparison of students. And that's usually the, core courses that the student is taking. But in this case, Miami is doing a weighted GPA, and at least they are telling you that they are using the weighted GPA. If a college doesn't say weighted or unweighted, I wouldn't make assumptions. I would have your student contact the college and ask them directly. And first of all, it's perfectly fine to be asking these types of questions, whether your student is emailing their regional rep or if you happen to go on a college visit. This is perfectly valid and good questions to ask. I encourage students and families to ask these questions. And in these questions in particular, I think are great for the student to ask. It gets their voice in front of the admissions officer. It gets an email out to the college from the student. It shows their interest. I try to make no assumptions in the admissions process. So if anything is unclear, I always recommend asking the college. And this is important to know because I had a direct experience with a student who family was expecting that they would be offered based on a chart like this, based on a school that was providing automatic merit, that their student was going to be offered the top tier of a scholarship, and that's what they had factored in terms of their affordability. And then when their offer came, the student got the tier below, and they were very confused. And it turned out that the student was using her weighted GPA, and the chart that the college was presenting was using an unweighted GPA. So that was the disconnect, but it was an important disconnect. Okay, so moving on, this is an example of of schools that offer competitive merit scholarships. And I chose USC, which is the University of Southern California, purposely because they have different dates for their competitive merit scholarship versus their regular decision application. So USC has a deadline of November 1st, which happens to also be their early action deadline, which is fairly new. They started early action about 2 years ago. So for merit scholarships. So if your student wants to apply to the merit scholarships at USC, they need to know that the deadline is November 1st, which is early action. But USC's regular decision deadline is December 1st. So if your student doesn't apply early action and they apply regular decision, they will not be considered for merit scholarships. So here's a perfect example where a deadline is going to make a big impact if it's missed. So I wish I could say there was one source that listed all the deadlines for every college. There just isn't. There's too many colleges, but really it's not that there's too many colleges, is that each college does their own thing. They update things in their own manner. And so we can kind of like lead you close to the information you need. But at the end of the day, I always recommend to scour a college's website, gather as much information directly from the website, and honestly, sometimes then confirm it with an admissions officer, because the college is the final source of all of this information, whether it's deadlines, whether it's merit scholarship requirements. So make sure you have all the latest and the right information, which is going to come directly from the colleges. So I see there's a question about applying early action. Let me answer that in 1 minute, and let me just finish the rest of the information on this example. So again, USC is just one of those schools where competitive merit scholarship deadline is one date, and then applying is another date. This is a little bit unusual, but I like to bring it up. A lot more colleges have where the competitive merit scholarship deadline could be at the same time as the regular decision deadline, or it could be after. And usually if it's after, it's because they've invited your student to apply after your student has submitted their application. But again, it's important just to know when these deadlines are and to confirm it with the school. The second example here is BU. Also, their deadline is December 1st. And I picked this example just to kind of show that, so these are two schools that they have this competitive application, but they don't actually share with you any particular requirements of saying your student has to have a certain grade level to apply to the scholarship or not. Obviously, your student should be in the range of being possibly accepted to these schools, but they're not giving specifics, and they're not saying, we require a certain test score before you can even apply to these scholarships. But sometimes the colleges give hints, and BU gives a little bit of hint if you read their merit scholarship page, and they say most applicants have SAT scores above 1,500 and ACT score above 33. Again, doesn't mean your student should not apply, but they kind of are showing you that these are the types of students that they tend to give merit scholarship money to. I haven't done this analysis, and I should do it soon, but I've seen a lot of parents kind of mention that they have found that students that have like a 32 on their ACT, I don't know like what SAT equivalent they've found, but usually starts to open up a lot of merit scholarships, and particularly those partial or full tuition scholarships tend to be available for students with that SAT of 32 and above. So that's just something to think about. If your student is close to that number in terms of taking a test, they might want, if they're like around a 30 or 31, they might want to take it again just to try and inch up a little bit. But that doesn't mean that there aren't merit scholarships available for students with lower test scores. It just means that as your student's test score gets higher, then the opportunities for merit increase. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I guess on the topic of test scores, colleges have been, swinging back and forth. This is my opinion. I think that you're going to see more of the selective colleges go back towards the test requirement because their admissions offices just got overwhelmed in terms of going through all of the applications, and that they, so that's a trend you're starting to see. I think in a certain tier of college, it will continue to remain test optional, because just for the reason that the more selective schools got more applications and it overwhelmed them. A different tier of school liked having more of those applications, so they don't want to narrow the applicant pool, and so they're going to keep it test optional. But in a lot of cases, and particularly the schools that offer competitive merit scholarships, and even the schools that offer automatic, whether usually, even if they're test optional, they may require test scores to give out their merit. So keep that in mind. School could be test optional to be accepted, but it could be test required for their merit scholarship money. So my recommendation, and it's not too late for seniors, although it's getting late, to still take the tests. But absolutely, if you're a parent on here with a 10th grader or 11th grader, I recommend that they take the test so that they have it. They have it kind of in their back pocket. They have it as an option to use. And then you can decide school by school whether or not your student is going to apply, if the school is test optional, if they're going to apply and use it or not. But it's better to have the test score and make that decision of whether or not to use it in the application than to not have the test score at all. Yes, BU is Boston University. Okay. Let me go on. How about, before I go to the next session, let me take a quick break and look at some questions. Yeah, so somebody is saying it's interesting to ask admissions counselors what percentage of test optional colleges give merit to students who do not submit scores. Likely very few, but this information is not exactly transparent. It's a great question. I would definitely ask. I don't really know what type of answers you will get. And B, you're absolutely right. It's not transparent. Unfortunately, a lot of information in the process isn't as transparent as we would like. I'm going to show you as much transparency as we can pull together, but more of those subtleties, which shouldn't be a subtlety, but you're right. How many students? First of all, the first level of question is at a test optional school, how many students apply test optional versus how many students don't apply. We don't get that information. We do get the information of how many students enroll and they enrolled and they had test scores versus students who enrolled and didn't have test scores. So that gives you a hint as to, maybe what the applicant pool was in terms of who applied with scores and who didn't. And then you're absolutely right, kind of a more even subtle question, but is important if you're looking for merit, is how many of the students who are offered merit are offered it that have a test score versus they don't. I've never seen a college share that information, but if you ask, maybe they will tell you a little bit more about it. So even though I will say this, sometimes people feel like colleges are these special places that you shouldn't press them with hard questions. I don't believe that. You are making a big purchase decision and you need to ask whatever questions you want to ask to get the information you feel you need to manage the process as best you can for your family. So again, Kathy, you may not get this information, you may not get the answer, but I wouldn't be afraid to ask the question and push them. And this applies to any other type of question where a college may not have shared the information, doesn't mean you can't ask for the information. Okay. So let me, are grades assessed only through junior year or do senior year grades factor in? So if your student is applying early action, early decision, then the transcript and information that is sent is only going to be obviously through the end of junior year because they would not have finished up their freshman semester of senior year. But if your student is applying regular decision, then freshman first semester of senior year will be included. And a lot of times for some students who they choose not to apply early action because they feel like they need to have one more semester of grades to improve their what their grades look like, and that's why they wait till regular decision. So so again, depends on when your senior is applying and whether or not the grades are going to be factored in, or what, whether senior year grades are going to be factored in. So if you have a top GPA and top test scores, how does that factor in? So from a merit scholarship perspective, how that factors in is you just have probably, the best option of getting merit scholarships from the widest range of schools. It doesn't mean that that if you've got top GPA and top scores, you will be accepted everywhere. And also keep in mind that the most selective schools do not offer merit scholarships. It's a supply and demand situation. The top schools get enough applicants of the types of students that they want to accept. In fact, we all know they get too many of those of the ideal students that they want to accept, so they don't need to give out scholarship money the same way that another school might want to attract that strong applicant, and that's why they're giving out merit scholarship money. So if you have a top student, congrats to them. They just have more options of where they can apply, and they have the top students that I have seen. And I'll give you this quick example, and then I'll move on because I'm just trying to get through in the hour. We had a family who was in our program this year, and she was a top student, an excellent student in so many ways, not just grades and all in her activities. But her father knew from the beginning that he had a certain budget that he could only afford. And actually, this will lead into the next section. They were from a family of good means, and he actually had a very good income and they had good savings, but he had other financial constraints. Quite honestly, he had a disabled, another disabled child that he had to, support, and he was supporting his own elderly mother. So, as we all know, just because your income and your tax returns say one thing, it doesn't mean that all of that money is disposable and can be used for college. So on paper, he looked like he could pay for the full cost of college for his daughter, but he really couldn't. And the other factor was she already knew that she wanted to go on to law school, so she wanted to save and use whatever money they had set aside for education to be used as far as possible to, potentially pay for graduate school. So I share all this for you because, again, she was a top student, and they managed the process very strategically. They applied to a range of schools in terms of selectivity. So she applied to 2 Ivies, even though her father made it very clear that he didn't think he was going to be able to afford them because they weren't going to. He knew he wasn't going to be able to afford them because this was a family that was not going to get any need-based aid. But the student wanted to apply, and the father said, "Okay, because maybe it will make you feel better just to know that you got in." And then they applied to, if we're going to look at selectivities, schools at a tier below the Ivies and at 2 tiers below the Ivies that offered a lot more money. She got in to all of these other schools, and then it was just the range of money that was offered. And then in addition, she had to do a lot of competitive merit scholarship awards. So I share all this is because A, it was a lot of research, but research that paid off. B, they knew their numbers in advance, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And C, the student understood that if they really wanted to get the best financial deal, she wasn't going to be going to the most selective school if you look at schools in terms of, admission rates. So there's a lot packed in there. There's a lot, in terms of how they manage the process financially and emotionally about how they approach the process. They were very open with their student from the beginning about what they could afford and what that meant in terms of the type of school that she could ultimately, attend. And they had to make trade-offs. Okay, so long story, but I just wanted to share. So let me go about next section. Know your numbers. So there's three important numbers. One is the cost of attendance at each school, and that varies, right? Some schools have, and cost of attendance means both tuition, room and board, and whatever other fees that they might include, an estimate for travel, an estimate for, just living expenses, an estimate for books and supplies. Each school has a cost of attendance on their website. So, make sure that you know that number. There's a new number this year called SAI, Student Aid Index. It used to be called EFC. And this is the number that the FAFSA ends up calculating. But you can estimate this by going to, if you guys can just Google it, I would Google SAI, federal SAI calculator or estimator. The federal government has a link to a calculator that estimates your SAI. It's important to know what your SAI is, because I'm going to show you in a second, because the next formula determines your financial need. So colleges look at the cost of attendance, and then they subtract what the government says is your SAI, and what's left is what's called your financial need. And depending on what that number is, at some schools, you may be eligible for need-based money, and at other schools, you may not. And there are some families that are kind of like on the border, on the edge, where at some schools, they are eligible for need-based aid, and at other schools, they aren't eligible. So some schools, they're targeting the school because the school offers need-based aid, and other schools are targeting the school because the school offers merit aid. And for other families, and I'll show you in the examples, your SAI is going to come out to be so high that you know that there's no school where you're going to get need-based aid, and so you're only looking at schools that can offer your student merit scholarships. Okay, so let me go through these quickly. In this example, a family's SAI is $30,000. At one school that has a cost of attendance of $50,000, their need is $20,000, right? At another school, the cost of attendance is higher, their need is going to be $50,000. So your financial need is going to vary based on the college's cost of attendance. And this type of family should be looking at schools, they can be looking at schools that offer merit scholarships, but they also should be looking at schools that can offer need-based aid, since they could be eligible for need-based aid. At this second school example here, this family has done their SAI, and they have an SAI of $90,000. For majority of colleges, there are unfortunately some colleges now this coming year who are going to have a total cost of attendance that's above $90,000. But for majority of colleges, this $90,000 SAI is not going to make them eligible for any need-based aid. So as you can see, if they're looking at a school that is the cost of attendance is $40,000, well, obviously a college is going to look at their SAI and say, you can afford this. We're not going to give you any need-based aid. And even at a cost of attendance of $80,000, the college is going to say you're not going to get need-based aid. But if those colleges offer merit scholarship, then the student could be offered merit scholarship. So that's why it's really important to know kind of, are you looking at a school, or is your family situation one where you need-based aid and you could be eligible, or is your situation where you're not going to receive any need-based aid? So if you want to get additional money, you have to find schools that offer merit scholarships. Okay, last important number is to know your family's budget. So again, I gave that example of that family. I can't remember specifically what his SAI was, but let's just assume it was over $100,000. So it was clear he could pay for any colleges out there in theory, but it didn't matter. He had a budget, and his budget was $50,000. So they had to find the school that would provide enough merit scholarship money so that he could meet his budget. And so that's important to factor in here. Again, and this is the example with the family that had an SAI of $90,000. That's what the government is saying that you can afford. That doesn't mean that A, you can truly afford it, and it doesn't mean that B, that's what you want to spend. So they have a budget of $45,000. In one school, if the school has a cost of attendance below your budget, well, then obviously you can afford it because it's below your budget. If a school has a cost of attendance that's above your budget, then the only way you're going to be able to afford it is if that school also offers merit scholarships. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving on. Actually, let me just skip ahead a little bit to, because my tips for building a balanced college list. And then I'm going to quickly show you college insights. So as you can see, it's important to know your numbers, know your SAI, know your family budget, know whether or not you're a family that might be eligible for needs-based aid, or if you're not going to be eligible at all, you're only looking for merit scholarships. I recommend that you cast a wide net. And what I mean by that is don't put too many restrictions yet on the search for colleges. A lot of times families say, well, you know, my student, of course, this is the most popular. My student wants to be in a big city. They want to be in these states. And, you know, or they want to go to a school with a big sports, you know, feeling. They want to, and you know, just like in anything with life, it's, again, I'm going to apply the supply and demand. More popular places, locations, more expensive cities are going to translate into higher tuition costs, because it costs more for that college to operate there. Or if a college has a high demand because they're very popular, then they're going to charge more. So I say cast a wide net is because colleges that you might not know about, colleges in locations that maybe your student didn't originally consider, could be more affordable options. At least know what those schools are before you take them off your list. If you go into this search and you're making a list and you're too narrow, you won't ever see these other schools to even decide whether or not they're schools that you should be researching. Okay, I'm going to show you college insights in the time that we have left, and then I'll go look at the questions. College Insights uses information from 3 important sources. The most important source, which the majority of the information is from something called the Common Data Set. Just curious if anybody wants to put into the chat, are you familiar with the Common Data Set? Has anybody looked at a school's Common Data Set? If you haven't, great. It's a great source. If you want to go to a college's individual Common Data Set, you can always Google the college name. Like, you know, I'm just saying, like, you could say Tulane College Data Set, Common Data Set, sorry, and it will, Google will, you know, show you, bring you to the link of the school's Common Data Set. Regardless of whether or not you use our tool or not, I encourage families to pull up a Common Data Set and look through it. It's a ton of information, good information. What the only thing that's hard about it is that there isn't one source that combines it all together, except that's what we've done here. So if you know of a particular school, you can Google it, like I just said. You can say the name of the school and Common Data Set, but there's not a place, except what I'll show you, where you can kind of do what I call a reverse lookup, where you can kind of say, I want a college with this requirement, and, you know, show me that information which comes from the Common Data Set. Yes, I will. Sorry, I did skip over leverage school. Let me finish this slide, and I'll explain what I meant by leverage school. So majority of our data comes from the Common Data Set. It is licensed. There's only 3 sources that provide the Common Data Set. One is the College Board, one is the US News and World Report. This is how they create their rankings. And the other is a company called Peterson's, and they license the data. The other source of data is iPads, which is directly from the government. It is free. This is the information that you can get if you go to a website called College Navigator, which is the government's website, and also the college scorecard. The only issue with the government data is that there tends to be a lag time. It tends to be a little older. It's just, you know, the process of colleges sending it to the government and the government updating it. So Common Data Set is the most recent data, and government data is a little bit older. Also, in the government data, they don't have some of the intricacies of data that they have in the common data set. But so that's why we again mainly use common data set and use a little bit of government data. And then the third data, which is just ours, is crowdsourced data that we've collected now, probably I think it's been 6 years, where we ask families to share their actual offers. So the other two sources, common data set and government data, are self-reported data that the colleges share. Self-reported, nobody kind of reviews it, makes sure that it's accurate. Most of the time it is accurate. There's sometimes, you know, we find some glitches, but crowdsourced data are the families saying, this is what I actually got. This isn't what the college said they were going to give. This is the actual offer that my student got. So that's really interesting to see. And it usually validates a lot of times what the college says, but you can kind of see the range. Like if a college says we give an average of 35,000 in merit scholarship, you will see a range in the crowdsourced office of some people getting, you know, 25 and other people getting 45, and you can kind of see what their stats are. Okay. So let me go back to leverage school really quickly. I had that on a previous slide. So what I mean by that is you can Google something called a peer school. So if again, I'm just using Tulane as an example. If I Googled Tulane's peer colleges or peer schools, then you'll see other schools that Tulane views as their competitors. And so sometimes it's good for, particularly if you're looking for merit scholarships, that your student, that you find one or two of these peer schools or one or two of these schools that are similar to a school that your student is really interested in, that because if another school offers more merit scholarship money, you can use that in a financial aid appeal. So you want to look for maybe another school that is somewhat similar in admission rate and maybe location, you know, and it doesn't, when I say location, it doesn't have to be the same state, but maybe is, you know, in the suburbs or, if you're, you know, I would still hope that your student would want to go to that school if they get accepted, but you might want to have one or two of these schools, if it doesn't take a lot of work to apply, to be on the list that your student actually gets merit scholarship money from, and maybe even more than the average, and then you can use that in a financial aid appeal. So that's kind of being strategic and thinking ahead for next springtime when you're going to get offers in, and you want to have a few different offers that you can leverage from each other and use in an appeal situation. Okay, let me switch. Let me stop sharing this and go to Insights. Sorry if I'm rushing, just trying to get through for people who might need to leave because it's middle of the day. Okay, so this is our tool, Insights. If you go to insights.road2college.com, this is where you will find it. And let me just point out, and I'll show it when we go in there too. I mentioned tests, taking tests, and we all know that the SAT has gone digital. We are working with a company that is offering free digital SAT tests. I know that the College Board offers a free test, and they might, I think they actually might offer 3 or 4 of them now. Students should absolutely take the College Board one, but we actually recommend that you save those College Board ones, because those are the actual tests, and use other tests as other practice tests as part of the your students' prep. So anyhow, with the tests going digital these days, in addition to the College Board free tests, families also have to find other places of getting the digital free tests, and we've just hooked up with a company that is going to offer it. So if you create a account in Insights, and creating an account is free, you'll get access to the free digital SAT test as well. Okay, so I'm going to log in. And to tell you the truth, I already have an account. If you were to log in for the first time, you're prompted with a few questions to set up your profile, and then you come to this screen. This screen, you can search for an individual college. If you already, have a college in mind that you want to look for, you can go to our power search, which I'm going to jump to and show you in a second. If you've added information to your profile, like your location, any majors that your student is interested in, their GPA, SAT, ACT scores, then we will create a list of recommended colleges based on the information that you shared in the profile. My lists means that's kind of the list. Once you've created your list and you've named them, you can go and specifically, compare them and look into them in more detail. But let me go back to Power Search and show you what you can search by. So why our search is a little different is that it's very focused on the financial aspect and on whether the school is offering merit scholarships. Here, let me put the link in the chat. Somebody just asked for it. So you can put in individual colleges that you might want to look at. You can select colleges by major. You can select colleges by region. But again, I would stay away from this top selection first, because and so you don't narrow it down too much. And then you can start selecting by cost of attendance. We talked about the importance of cost of attendance. You can pick at, look at what's the out-of-state cost of attendance if you're looking at public schools out of state. What's the private cost of attendance? I use this a lot. You can search by average merit award. And you could search by the net cost. So we do the calculation and we subtract what the average merit award is from the cost of attendance. And that gives you the net. If you're a family that thinks that you might be eligible for need-based aid, you can search by what percent of need a college is going to meet, which is very important. So some colleges meet 100% of need. Those are going to be your most selective colleges. Some colleges offer 90% of need. Obviously, if you're a family with financial need, you want to find a college that's going to offer the most financial need as possible. We have school size, but again, I try not to use it first because I don't want to narrow it down too much. You can search by application deadline, but here's the most common first search I do. In fact, actually, somebody was asking about this the other day. So somebody had a ACT of it was actually a 28, and so I did a search by I did the search by a range of 28 to 30, and I filtered it by show me the schools where that ACT range is in the top, in the 75th percentile, because going back to where I described why colleges are offering merit money, they're offering it to attract that stronger and better student. That student is going to be a student that's going to be in the 75th or above percentile of the types of students that come to that college. So colleges share that information, their percentiles, in terms of their test scores. They unfortunately don't share that information in terms of the GPA. And the other problem with searching by GPA is that more colleges just do not share GPA information as opposed to sharing ACT and SAT scores. So if your student didn't take the test, what I would do, again, just for searching and research purposes, is I would take their GPA and convert it to what their possible ACT or SAT score might be. And you can just Google GPA to SAT conversion. There's a website, Prep Scholar, that shares a lot of those charts. This is just a way of estimating what their test score might be. Obviously, as I recommended, I think they should take the test just to have it. They might not use it in applications, but then you would have it from a searching perspective. How do you cast a wide net if you don't search by location or major? You can include major by casting a wide net, but location narrows it down. location is, by wide net, I'm saying, let's look at all the schools from an academic standpoint where your student is the strongest. And location does not play in to whether or not your student is academically strong at a certain school or not. So that's why I would leave location off from the first search and see what you get. You can definitely put a major in if your student has a strong major. I hope that answers your question. So, okay. So I'm gonna put top range there. I could also add in, I only want schools that are going to offer merit scholarship of, 30,000 or above. Okay. And you can see by, I only get 16 colleges that are offering that much merit scholarships. Let me decrease this to 20,000. Okay. Now I'm getting 77 colleges that are going to offer a student with a 28 to 30 ACT that's at the top of the range and has merit. Now I can sort this list by any way I want. Let's sort it by average merit aid. And I can see that, Tulsa, University of Tulsa comes up as the school that's offering the highest merit. Again, it's to this student, a student that has a 28 to 30 ACT. And I might add this whole list of schools to, and name it. I could name it to any name I want. I could add it to an existing list I already have, or I might go through each of these schools and individually pick which of these schools I want to add to my list and save. So let's just change this ACT range. Let's go and show a student with a 30. Oh, sorry, that didn't change. Oh, I have to clear. ACT of 30 to 32. So we'll go like the next level up. And range, and we'll go back and keep that merit scholarship at 20 to 100,000. Okay, so you can see that this student at a range of 30 to 32 has 74 colleges that can offer this much merit. And let's just actually, and what I should have done is I should, I should have kept the lower range. So you can see it went from, I think what it was, 77 schools to now it increased to 123 schools. So as you can increase your test score, then it increases the number of possible schools that can offer merit. Let's sort this again. And now there's a different school, Beloit, which is at the top, which is offering 41,000 in merit. So again, this is just a quick just showing a demo.
The lectures are all recorded. Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Okay, let me just go now to my lists, because once you add these schools to your list, you can see more data on them. Let me pull up. So I'll just pull up a list that I must have made. I'm not quite sure what the criteria is, but it just says colleges that offer most merit. And now I have the list of schools which I saved from my power search, and it's in a table format. And I can view more information, and I can sort the columns in the table view. And I'm just going to add all the information that I have here. Sometimes people don't want to see all this information at once, but I do. So, and then you can scroll through all the columns. Some of this obviously shows you location. We have links to the video tours. It quickly tells you whether or not the school offers merit, gives you the average GPA. You can have a link directly to the website, a link to our crowdsourced offers. which I'll show you in a second. We have percentage breakdown of men versus women, different ethnicities, student faculty ratio. But some of the fields that I like to look at are, we break out all the admission rates. So let's see. So here's a school that, so then now you can sort the column to look at schools by what their early decision rate is versus, so here's an example, Johns Hopkins, their overall admit rate is 7%. This is very selective, but their early decision rate is 15% because they are taking more students early decision. And here's an important stat to know, that they take 60% of the students early decision. That's a huge percentage of the class. So you can see that schools that are doing early decision, they are doing it because they're taking a big percentage of their class early decision. And once they take that large of a class early decision, it means it becomes harder to get in regular decision. It doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. It's just that your odds become more difficult to actually be accepted. This is just information that you should know before your student applies. It might determine where they apply early. I'm not suggesting that you apply early decision because that's a big decision. But if your student is applying to a school that does have a very strong early decision acceptance, and where they take a large percentage of the class, they just need to know that if they're applying regular decision, that their odds are going to be harder to get in. And here's a school, Babson, that takes early action, they take early decision, and you just can, we show you the breakout at what these numbers are. Okay, so somebody asked a question, does the source of the merit scholarship, is it say college reported or crowdsourced? We have both. So let me jump to merit scholarship information, which is here, this column that says merit scholarship, average merit award. The information that is shown on the chart is school reported. The information that is crowdsourced reported, which I'll pull up, is at the individual offer level. But the two fields here, the two columns, that are important to look at is what percent of students that didn't have financial need actually were offered merit award, and then what was the average merit. So again, the more selective schools, well, the Ivies in general, they don't give out merit. Johns Hopkins, definitely a selective school, gives out a little bit of merit. So they give out merit to 10% of the students that don't have any financial need. Duke gives out merit, but it's competitive. You have to fill out scholarship application. So you can see 3% of students, get merit, and they're very selective, versus down here, Washington and Jefferson College, they're giving out merit to every student who doesn't have financial need, and the average dollar amount is almost $35,000. So you can see in this column how those numbers vary. So let me go to the crowdsourced information, and we'll look at Washington let's go to Washington and Jefferson. Crowdsourced. Oh. Sorry, I have a lot of tabs open, so this is probably, my computer is slowing this down. Okay, let's look at it one other way, which I think might be better. Here. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is I didn't pull up Washington. Jeffrey, this is Washington and Lake. So here you can see crowdsourced offers, and if we want to go to this current year. So this are actual offers that families and students shared. And there's, a range. We ask for their EFC or their SAI number because that gives you a sense of whether or not they were a family that had any need, or it gives you also a sense of what their income level is. And for actually, Washington and Lee didn't give out that much. Let's see, in the previous year. So you can see Washington and Lee isn't that generous with merit. Let's look at their numbers here, which makes sense now that I look at the numbers. So 11% of freshmen without need got merit, and they got merit of 43,000, but it just wasn't, they just don't give out that much merit to students. Let's look at one other school to show you here. Susquehanna is pretty generous. And you can see that whether or not, whatever the student's SAI or EFC is, they are giving out a lot of merit, usually in the 40,000 range. But when you look at the crowdsourced information, you can see what state the student is from, you can see what their GPA is, you can see what their SAT or ACT score is. And if a student, let's see, all of these students seem to have given, here's a student from offer number 3. They did not, if there's students, if the SAT or ACT is not listed in the crowdsourced information, it means that the student applied test optional, that they didn't share any of the test scores. And yet this student still got merit. So, but if you, well, actually, here's 2 more students, offer 8 and 9, that applied and didn't put in their SAT or ACT score. But it looks like the majority of students did. But actually here, I'm scrolling through, there's a range, like, so, but you can see how this dollar amount is pretty significant. It varies a little bit from low 40s to high 40s. But this is the type of information that you'll see in crowdsourced. So I know it's about 20 after 1. I'm definitely gone over. Let me look at some of the questions. So there is a free version of College Insights, and what free means is that you can see some of this information, but you can't see all of it. So you can do a power search, but you won't see all the results. In the free version, you cannot see the crowdsourced information. So, and you cannot, you can only save one list of schools. So you get a sense of how the tool works, but you don't get all of the features. Another feature is you can add notes, particularly for families who are still going on tours. You can write notes for individual colleges, and you can also write notes for lists that you might create. So here, this is a list, I just called it colleges with most merit, 8, and then I could, oops, where's my list? Oh, there it is. Nope, sorry. Oh, hold on. Oh, add notes to list. I can add notes here to this list as well. If you want to kind of keep, just track if there's anything specific. Maybe it's the criteria you use for creating the list. Maybe it's some other research that you want to do related to the list. So those are other features related to it. So are most of the crowdsourced data for Eastern U.S. schools or evenly balanced throughout the U.S.? That's a good question. I think that most of the crowdsourced information, I mean, we've have a range. I will, off the top of my head, I know that like certain schools are just more popular in terms of people sharing information. University of Pittsburgh is very popular, University of Delaware, Beloit, Elon, we have a lot of data on. We probably don't have, a ton of data on the UCs because they don't give out merit, so people don't tend to share that information as much. So, hard to say. I haven't done like a national view, but it's a good question. let's see, what else? Do you need to pay full tuition if we apply early decision and get accepted? What you're gonna, possibly, if you apply early decision, I encourage this whether you apply regular decision as well. You should be running a school's net price calculator. It is not a guarantee of what you will pay, but it is directionally, it's an estimate of what you will pay. And I would save the results of the net price calculator, and I would save whatever input you put in. Just because if your final cost is significantly different than what the school's net price calculator said, and you entered all the information correctly, I think you have a case to kind of share with the college. But in terms of early decision, you're gonna pay whatever the tuition is, whatever the cost of attendance is that they share with you, at the time of acceptance. So if they don't give your student any need-based aid, if they don't give your student any merit scholarships, when they accept them, then you will be paying the full price. But again, you should have an idea of what you might be offered. Definitely in terms of need-based aid, you should, most of the schools that offer early decision have pretty good net price calculators. So I would definitely run the net price calculator. I would, again, like keep track of that information. And if a school is going to offer merit scholarships, they have a chart, then you know ahead of time, what the likelihood is that it's what the school's going to cost you. If the school doesn't have a chart of what their merit scholarship is, then you need to do the research that I showed here by either going into Insights and looking at what the average merit scholarship award is and what percentage of the students actually receive merit scholarships, or you need to pull up the common data set and look it up specifically for that college. So I would definitely, if you're applying early decision, do all your financial research. You won't know an exact dollar amount of what you're going to be paying, but you should have the ballpark of what is likely that you're going to end up paying if your student is accepted.
Hi, Debbie, could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So I just had a quick question about the crowdsource. I noticed when you brought up the example of Susquehanna, the amounts were sort of all over the map for, I saw an example on screen of $60,000 offered for 1480 SAT, and the same amount offered for like an 1100 SAT. Those are pretty different scores. So are those offers, I assume they're just not merit. I assume they're kind of all over the place, right? Is it needs-based and merit-based on the crowdsource side of it? Because the scores don't really seem to make sense.
I mean, we ask, you can see here there's a row that says need-based aid versus merit. So we ask that people break it out. So you're right. So in this case, this person got need-based aid and they got merit scholarship. I have to say, to be fair, in this particular year, the need-based aid information probably isn't all in here now because people have received it so late in the process. In past years, by April 1st, everybody had all their information, and so they entered it in here. It's really only been in the month of May that the majority of families have gotten their need-based aid information because of the whole FAFSA fiasco. So it's a valid point, valid question. We're doing more outreach now to families to come back to update their information. A lot of the families got merit information much earlier on, and they didn't have their need-based aid information till more recently. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you.
No problem. Oh, so can I find an SAI EFC for now, for the 2025, 2026? Yes, you can. Go to, so the formula is not changing. So whatever the formula is that was new this past year is going to be the same for next year. Google the federal government SAI estimator, and what the numbers that you, I guess, the numbers you have to use, I didn't say, but if your student is going to be applying or entering in the fall of 2025, you're going to be using your most recent tax information from 2023. So just make sure you're using the correct tax information when you enter it, and then in theory you will have an estimate of your SAI for the 2025-2026 season. Okay, let me just scroll back, see what else I can quickly answer. What would the equivalent for, for the, okay, somebody answered, what's the equivalent of an SAT score or ACT score? The source I like to go to is Prep Scholar. They have a chart that kind of shows you, because they've done so much test prep with students. They know, they look at their ACT, SAT results, and they also know what the student's GPA is, and they've kind of put together a chart over the years that kind of shows an equivalence. I don't necessarily want my student to be the strongest academically because she wants to learn from other smart, engaged students. Thoughts? Being at the somebody's responded, being at the top percentage academically of your stats increases your chances of merit aid. Right. So this is the trade-off. So somebody is saying, I don't want my student to be like the top. You know, even though your student is the top, doesn't mean they're going to be, in that top percentile. It means that there are other strong students there. This is the trade-off between, to some extent, I'm going to say status of a school that your student might want to go to versus the cost. There are a lot of schools that you may not have heard of, or that aren't in the major cities, or that are just outside the major cities, that don't get the national press that, we all know that there's a certain group of 20 or 25 schools tend to get, that are still really strong, and that offer good merit aid and still offer your student opportunities. So there might be other trade-offs. There might be, if your student is the strongest or in that top quartile, of students at a school, they may be offered more advantages through an honors college. They may be offered more research opportunities. They may be easier for them to get internships. So there are trade-offs that you just have to consider. So somebody asked about the financial aid data. So versus which comes from the colleges and which comes from crowdsourcing. The only information that comes from crowdsourcing is what I'm showing here, like on this screen. We don't do we don't do an average of the crowdsourced information. You have to look at it individually. All the information that is in the table and is in the searching comes from the common data set. Okay, so let me just see. Can merit money be used for housing? No, it's usually applied towards tuition. Unless there are, so there's something called full tuition scholarship or full ride scholarships. Full ride scholarships does cover everything. But full tuition is what the name is, just tuition, and most merit money is applied towards tuition. And somebody's asking about twins and considered in the SAI calculation. Unfortunately, twins and just whether or not you have multiple students in college at the same time are no longer considered. It was a major change that happened between last year and this new formula. I don't really personally understand the rationale behind taking that away, other than I think that there were some political reasons that some of the politicians who were supporting the change wanted it for their constituents, but there really wasn't a rational reason why they made that change. But I will say that some colleges, and it's colleges that are accept or ask for the CSS profile form, are still offering accommodations to students that, to families who have twins or families that have multiple students in college. It's a college by college decision. Now, it used to be more of just something that was factored into the formula, but it's more of a school by school. Okay, I'll just answer the last question. Somebody's asking if you want more help with one-on-one counseling. We have, let me go to our website. So we actually have a few different ways that you can use College Insights. Somebody asking about the services. We have, here you go. We have on our main website, there's a menu bar that says services. These are the different ways that we can work one-on-one with students. But the other way that you can get College Insights, you can get a free version. You could go month to month. And we also have different membership levels. And what's different about the membership levels, everybody gets insights, that's the same, but you get access to more information. So our highest level, we call it premium. We're actually going to offer a discount on it because of the time of year it is. With that level, you get the insights, you get access to our video library. So we do like, we as you guys probably know, we do a lot of public events, but we do a lot of like private events to people who are part of the membership. And every month we do a few different topics. We go in depth on them. And if you're a premium member, you get invited live. You can ask questions, and then you also get access to all the recordings. So that's kind of, and to the person who asked about one-on-one services, if you're a premium member, you also get a discount on all of our one-on-one services. So those are just the other advantages of the different membership levels. And I'll tell you, my personal goal and philosophy with how we help families is we try and be as reasonably priced as possible. We're really aiming to help what I call the DIY family. We are not like a full service counseling company where, we only work with the student and the parent kind of is out of sight. We are really working with the family and actually working a lot with the parent, because I believe if you educate the parent on this process, they ultimately, your student the best, your finances. We explain to you about how to do all that, and then you will have a great outcome because you're involved in the process. So, so that's just kind of my philosophy and kind of who we're really trying to help. But in terms of essays, we do have programs and services that work with students on the essay. And for the essays, we are working for the students, and with the students, we're not working with the parents, because obviously the student is the one who is writing the essay. So hope this was helpful. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, and good luck in the process. And you guys are somewhat lucky in that you didn't go through this past year, which was a nightmare. And hopefully there will be a lot of lessons learned for this coming season, and it should be much smoother. Okay, take care. Sorry I didn't get this done in an hour, but hopefully I got most of the important stuff done within the hour. Talk to you soon. Bye.